Welcome back to Your View here on 405. We're going to be having that discussion about SMMEs, the challenges that they're facing, and really giving guidelines to President Cyril Ramaphosa as he gives his SONA this Thursday. Joining me in studio, we have Ubuntu Maja, Tech Tribe, Accelerator Project Manager, Mhlanganisi Madlongolwana, I got that right, founder of the Desert Startup Boot Camp, Kanya Bonani, she's a familiar face to the station, political commentator, as well as Mac Edward, senior lecturer at the Wits Business School, as well as an entrepreneur. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you very much.
We've got a big task ahead of us. We're literally doing the work of business. We are setting the agenda. We are looking at the issues. And hopefully at the end of this discussion, we'll have solid guidelines for the president on, what exactly needs to be done to really assist SMMEs in the country. Before we get into that discussion, though, I do want to just go around the table, give you a chance to speak to us a bit about your sector, so our viewers who are watching can have a better understanding of exactly where you come from in terms of your views. Buntu, I think I'll start with you.
Thanks, Lindy. So we at Tech Tribe Accelerator and the SA Innovation Summit host this annual event whereby 3,500 people come from 35 countries, and essentially we trying to bring together a conversation between government, between corporates, between entrepreneurs, as well as incubators and everyone else working in between, in order to connect those entrepreneurs to the opportunities, the investors that are looking for investable opportunities as well. And the Tech Tribe Accelerator is, say, a medium where we're able to take, before the event, these entrepreneurs onto an investment readiness journey. So we identify the entrepreneurs that are capable and have a good potential of becoming investment ready, and then through this online acceleration give them the right tools such that when they do come into this ecosystem with investors, corporates and government, they're able to present themselves and communicate their business case in a way that is attractive. And so what we're focusing on is on innovative entrepreneurs, high growth entrepreneurs and startups that are, say, driving new economic value into the economy.
Sure. Kanya, a familiar face? You're more than just a political analyst.
I'll call myself a Zonke Bonke, but that's another story for another day. No, but for me, I think it's a little bit different because before I became a political analyst, I was working in the sort of youth policy space, specifically dealing with youth unemployment and how to sort of start finding and etching out employers that are ready to take on young people, create internships, learnerships, etc., but don't necessarily have the infrastructure to sort of get the learnership sort of process going, right? Trying to sort of get opportunities together whereby institutions like your CETAs trying to get funding together. How do we now provide these resources and these products that are going to be able to not only empower the employer but also empower the young person, so that should they walk away from a work integrated opportunity and say, look, I want to be able to self-employ, they can also walk through that sort of opportunity, those sort of pathways, those transitions into the labor market. So trying to sort of open up our gaze and understanding on employment and what roles that, for example, the SME would now take on, especially because SMEs are now under pressure to create 2 million new jobs, and how the president wants 80% of the new jobs to come from the SME sector, not realizing that only about 1,000 corporates are the big guys, but SMEs exist everywhere in every single sector, and we're sort of siloing them off as a special startup phase instead of trying to develop them and integrate them into the bigger mainframe and respect them as part of the value chain. So I think that's where I come in.
Mac Edward, tell us a bit about you.
Yes. I am a senior lecturer at the Business School, and we specialize in postgraduate training for both managers and entrepreneurs. For this program, which I am responsible for, is called Masters in Entrepreneurship and New Venture Creation, which is quite distinct from the usual business school programs, which are your MBAs and where we are training administrators and managers. In this particular course, we are training your entrepreneurs, but focusing at your high-growth targeted entrepreneurs in spaces like technopreneurship. We are looking up at corporate entrepreneurship, those entrepreneurship work up in big organizations looking up at new venture creation within that space. And enterprise development, which is a big potential driver for SME growth if implemented properly, because the country already has that. We have ED within the BEE codes and within the government policies and all that. And so we focus on that. And on another side, apart from my academic, I'm an entrepreneur. Sure. For 20 years. All I've been doing is creating new ventures, harvesting, exiting, and of course getting my fingers burnt in a lot of them.
I'm glad you touched on BEE, because that's one of the things, the compliance of it from an SMME's perspective. That's one of the things I want us to discuss, the challenges of being an SMME and trying to comply with that. We're going to get into that this evening. Mhlanganis, tell us a bit about you.
20 years ago, I was 11 years old. That's for sure. So this is an interesting discussion. I'm actually going through business school right now. I'm reading towards an MPhil in international business with a competing school. And so I work with the Desert Startup Bootcamp. We've been doing the work for about 6 years now. And the thinking behind the bootcamp was simply how do you build, and as Buntu says quite aptly, how do you build ecosystems for which businesses survive? The hypothesis is simple. If you build an ecosystem that's invested in the growth of businesses, those businesses usually have a higher survival rate. Now, the only challenge we found across the work that we were doing is that a lot of that work and a lot of those interventions were actually concentrated in a lot of urban areas. Now, I come from Uppington in the Northern Cape. Now, you have to take a 45-minute flight or drive 800 kilometers to get to Uppington. Now, economic opportunity or opportunity for support for smaller entrepreneurs actually becomes substantially more difficult to access within that space itself. And the thinking there is simple. How do you take someone from idea to market? By having developed an ecosystem, one, but also more importantly, and I like what Kanya is saying, is that how do you then plug those people into the value chain? We've grown across the board. We have a small alumni cohort of about 100 SMMEs that have collectively, and this is now rural businesses, raised about 2 million rand in mixed income funding. This is grants, this is business, this is investment. And the thinking is simple, is that if you take a business and have some sort of mentorship and some sort of interaction with that business for the period of about 3 months, you're usually able to get that person through to market, because you get to a stage where you turn over the idea as quickly as possible, make the mistakes as quickly as possible. But the thinking, and I think for me, and this is what I always say wherever I get a platform to speak, I think and this is where I'll sort of push Dr. McEdward a bit here, is that whenever we speak innovation, the next thing that follows is tech. And for me, it is a very weird exercise. I genuinely believe tech is an enabler of good business ideas that solve problems, and not necessarily the epicenter of what SMME innovation is.
We definitely want to get into more of that this evening as well. But before we even begin this discussion, we have to look at the issue of unemployment. Over 6 million South Africans officially without work. Statistics South Africa has revealed that the country's official unemployment rate has remained at an 11-year high of 29.1% in the fourth quarter of 2019. This was revealed during the release of the quarterly labour force survey earlier today. Our business reporter Wandiswan Tengento has the details.
South Africa's unemployment rate has not moved an inch. Statistics South Africa says the data shows the unemployment rate is still at 29.1%. The survey shows positive movement in the formal sector, recording the largest employment increase, followed by agriculture, which added 6,000 jobs in the fourth quarter. There is little to celebrate in industries such as trade and utilities. Manufacturing saw 39,000 workers being released in the fourth quarter.
As we look at the 6.7 million people who are unemployed in the first quarter of 2019, accounting for the 29.1%, 73.3% of those, that's more than a third, are in long-term unemployment, meaning that they have been unemployed for a year or more. And we can see that this is increasing every quarter as we measure.
Meanwhile, economist Sifiso Kenjane says this news continues to depict the state of the economy.
If you look at the parts of the economy that shed jobs is usually the part that generates jobs in December, right? Retail and manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so for them to be shedding jobs close to 200,000 combined is certainly problematic. And you also look at where the jobs were gained. Those were mostly community services, and that's around, some refuse disposal.
Statistics South Africa says the country's labour market continues to be unkind to black women, even though they make up over 24 million of the country's population.
The unemployment rate for black African women is sitting at about 35%, far beyond the national average of 29.1%. But when you look further in terms of your expanded definition, women in general are vulnerable to labour markets.
The unemployment rate has climbed from 24.5% to 29.1% in 5 years. Stats SA says out of all the political administrations, this is the first time since 2008 that the unemployment rate has not decreased in the fourth quarter. For Newsroom Africa on Channel 405, I am Wandi Swantengendo in Pretoria.
Well, what does that mean for SMMEs? We'll get